Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 7 of Passing the Torch, the podcast by Growth Mentor. My name is Marcus and today I need to start this episode with an apology. Our guest today is the first female guest we had in the podcast, and for that I am sorry. It took us a while to invite a female guest, but we needed to start with a bang, so we invited a really cool one called Faith Storey. Faith is the second coolest name in the Growth Mentor network after me. And she is a master of mentoring into the world of freelancing. She will tell you everything that you need to know if you've been thinking about going freelance. So if you've been thinking about it, this is the episode for you. I want to invite you to also to subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our social media channels, and I want to invite you to enjoy the following conversation. Hello, Faith, and welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Not bad, not bad. So it's 8 in the morning for you, right?
Yeah, it's nice and early here in Hawaii.
Completely the opposite. I think this is the biggest difference I ever had in the show of times. But it's awesome to have you. Absolutely awesome. And I'm just going to start straight away because I was checking your LinkedIn, and just so you people know, this is the craziest and longest. I thought my profile had a lot of stuff in it. Faith, I think she beat me into it. There's a ton of cool stuff in there. She's been doing, she's a behemoth of marketing. Absolutely. And we're going to dig into all of the things that you've been doing. So, Faith, I'm going to let you tell the story. I'm not going to introduce you too much. But I need to start with the regular sort of invitation to talk about how did you end up coming to Growth Mentor? Did you apply for a mentor, or did you come for help? How was your involvement, or how did you end up coming to us?
Yeah. So I actually have been both a mentor and a mentee. So I started off as a mentee probably a few years ago. I don't know. It's been a while now. So the first couple of years I was on the mentee side, and I was doing a lot of calls around the startup I was working at, trying to get better results for them at the time. And so I would talk with them. And I also was using it more for like mindset and career coaching as well, because there's a lot of people on there that have really great, solid careers. And so I would go to them for advice on like, oh, what job should I take next? Or what should I look for in my next job? So I kind of used it for a mixed bag of reasons. And then I eventually ended up applying to be a mentor when I made the switch to freelancing. I didn't immediately apply to Growth Mentor right after I became a freelancer, but I probably like a year after, because I realized I was having a lot of conversations over and over again on how do you make that transition to freelancing. And so I was like, well, I'm going to put myself on Growth Mentor, not for my marketing experience, but for, well, you could argue marketing experience for freelancing specifically, like how do you get clients, how do you price, and how do you make that transition? And so I didn't want to go down the mentor typical path of like, oh, I know how to do ads really well, ask me anything about ads, although I have had some of those calls, but I mostly like 90% of the calls have been around freelancing. So when I reached out to Fody with this this offer of like, I want to mentor on this topic, no one else was really doing that. And so that's kind of how that all came to fruition.
Which is an amazing thing to mentor on, because like I told you before the show, I've been doing it for almost a year and I'm still freaking out about it. I still don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes I wake up and all I want to do is just to go back. I want to be contracted forever. I don't want to do this freelancing anymore. But all the times you end up doing amazing things for people and you enjoy it a lot, and you get all this sort of, I manage my own time and I can control my fate.
Yeah.
So when you came as a mentee, right? Were you working with someone at that time, right?
Yeah, I was working at a startup called Case Text. It was a legal tech company. And so I was reaching out to people who had more experience in product-led growth, because I ended up leading a lot of the growth experiments there that were in the product. Not like I started out doing just their ads. And then as the role transitioned, I was doing things that I hadn't done before. And so I would reach out to mentors who had that, like, think of people like products like Webflow, where it's mostly product growth. And so I'm reaching out to people like that to say, hey, how did you do this? How do you prioritize experiments? Things like that.
Did you manage, did you get the company involved into like, look, we need help, let me call these guys, or was just your own initiative? Like, did you just jump in and do it?
It was my own initiative, yeah, because I didn't know, like, it would be a harder ask for the company to do it because Growth Mentor is also very new at this point in time. Like there was still probably like less than 500 mentors on there. I mean, I don't even know how many there is now, but it was very early days. So that it had probably been a harder ask then. But I also wanted it for my own self because I wanted to be able to ask other questions that weren't necessarily just related to this one job.
And how long after did you go freelancing? Like, did you decide, all right, I'm done with being contracted forever. I just want to do my own thing. How long after those calls?
After the calls, I would say less than a year because that was my last like full-time job before I went on my freelance journey. And so probably less than a year if I think about the timeline, how it all kind of felt.
Okay, and now I'm going to start getting the nuggets because like how was this journey? Like where was your mind when you say, okay, I'm going freelance, I'm taking the risk, I don't care, I'm going to go for it. Like how this little sort of switch of being comfortably hired by a company to say, you know what, I don't need to be hired, I can do my own stuff. Like how was that? Because I'm sure tons of people are thinking of doing it or planning on doing it, or at least giving it a try. So how was your beginning of that journey?
Man, if anyone who listens to this needs to know one thing, know that you're going to feel scared and you're never going to feel ready. Because it took me 6 months to actually decide from like the idea to actually executing on it and quitting my job. And that was all because of my lack of mindset of believing I could do it. And so there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of, I don't know if anyone would hire me because I was also like 3 years into my career period. Like I had graduated in 2018 and it was like 2020, I actually started freelancing in the midst of COVID, like when it was at its height. So people were like, you're crazy, don't do it. And so there was a mixed bag of reasons why I was so scared. But so it's normal to feel all of that fear. And even like you said, you still feel it even when you're doing it, right? Like it's like feast or famine kind of vibe. And I ended up quitting my job in November of 2020. And but part of the process of quitting is I actually got myself one client before I quit. So I wouldn't go straight from, having a paycheck to nothing. So I had one client, right? And then I actually pitched when I was quitting my job, I pitched them to become a client because I knew that they were going to end up needing to find someone to replace me. Why don't you just hire me in the interim as a contractor until you find that person? And so that actually worked well. I came out like right after quitting my job, having 2 clients, one of them being my former employer. And I can keep going on how the journey's been since then if you want, but that's kind of how it started.
Cool. And so this mindset, right? Like, I mean, like I said, and you said it, is scary, is taking that first step. Because, I mean, you're always part of a team. You're always part of like, look, we're part of a strategy. We're part of a plan. It's very rare that you work alone in a company. But then you go to literally work alone. I mean, you do have contacts for, I don't know, we need graphics or whatever. Like you have people that you know.
Yeah.
But how did it feel in the beginning? Right? Like after this mindset, after taking the first step, how did it feel like the first year of you freelancing? Did you ever get like a imposter syndrome or like what am I doing? Any doubts to go back?
Absolutely. Yeah, in the beginning, I was so nervous about my own worth that I would pitch when I was like talking with potential clients, I would pitch very low prices because I just didn't think I was worth anything at that point. Because I also didn't, something that I wish I had done in hindsight is look more at research of what are other freelancers in my space charging. That's something that I now, whenever I'm doing these calls, I tell people like, whatever your industry is, go see what other contractors are charging because you could probably charge around the same amount. And so I definitely charged too low because I felt the imposter syndrome. And I also just didn't really know how to sell. I think something that a lot of freelancers don't realize is you have to be good at sales to be a good freelancer because you're constantly having to pitch of like, why should they hire you over an agency or a full-time hire even like, cause you're obviously not going to get as much work done as a full-time hire, but you're also a lot cheaper. So like, there's a lot of pros and cons there, but so it's like learning how to pitch yourself was an issue during the first year. And eventually I got it right. By month 3, I was already over like 12K a month in terms of income, which was much higher than what I was making at my full-time job. And that was because I started, like, I was doing a lot of pitching those first 3 months of like, and then I learned what did and didn't work of like, oh, this is what sells and this is what doesn't sell. And then I over time, I just kept getting better and better and better. And so if anything, it's like putting in the reps of learning how to sell yourself is really important that first year. Honestly, the first 3 months, because obviously if it's like a year and you still can't pitch, you're probably going to go back to a full-time job because you're not going to have any clients. And so, yeah, learning how to pitch that first year was important. Learning how to price, go into it with some numbers in the back of your head from other freelancers is important. And also probably the most important thing, I should have brought this up first, is learning what service to even offer is huge, because whenever you're a full-time employee, you're doing so many different things. And so when you're freelancing, they are hiring typically a specialist of some sort.
For one thing, right?
Right. And so you have to figure out what is your one thing going to be. And I knew kind of initially what my one thing was going to be because I had the most experience in it. So for me, that was ads. But not everyone is as clear cut. It's like, if you're like a product manager, are you just going to be a freelance product manager? Are you going to do one specific set of tasks a product manager would do? So with that being said, I'd also look into, if you're wanting to start out with your first, honestly, you should probably do this before you quit your job, not even in the first year, like probably 3 months prior, is what service are you going to offer? And I can get more into the how do you pick that if you're interested. But
how did you start reaching out? Did you just call all of your connections and like, hey guys, I'm freelancing, or did you go to LinkedIn? Like, how was your first thing, your first go to?
Yeah, so this process will look different for each person just because of the services that you're offering will have different markets. So if you're looking for example, with ads, that's pretty universal, where I know I can go on Upwork, I can go on LinkedIn, I can ask my network. There's always going to be someone who needs ads done. And that's more universal. Whereas something like, I just keep referencing product managers, but you could apply this to engineers or designers, someone that is like more technical. You're probably going to have better success on a platform that is catered to those specific types of jobs, like TopTool, that's like catered specifically to engineers and designers, right? So the process in which you would get clients is going to vary a little bit. But for me, I made it very quickly publicly known that I was freelancing, and that definitely helped because people then knew they could hire me for services. And then I also, I'm trying to think of what all I did. I did update all of my marketplace profiles. So originally I was just on Upwork, but then I applied to, there's so many, by the way, like there's hundreds of them now for specific niches. And so there's at least like 5 to 7 that I applied for that are specific to marketing. And I got really good leads from those as well because they're vetting you. So like usually the caliber of clients is also higher as well. So they're willing to pay more. So I did a lot of marketplaces. I posted on LinkedIn, but I didn't actively ever really send outbound. A lot of it ended up becoming inbound because as who I was at the beginning of this journey, I did not feel comfortable sending outbound because I didn't know how to sell myself. So usually it was just inbound at that point.
I can imagine those, like when those, how can I write an email that is going to be like started thinking of the subject line, like, hi, Faith here. Your new marketing.
It's just so awkward. Yeah,
it is still like, and I don't think it ever changes. I mean, I'm still freaking out every time I have to send an email that is to someone I never met. I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm selling something in the subject. So I'm like, if I put Marcus here, no, it doesn't work. It never changes.
It's really awkward.
With the pricing, I'm very curious because I did the same thing. I made the same mistake. I'm like, sure, I'll charge this like a $500 here, $1,000 here. But then you notice that, wait, there's more hassle when you charge little than when you charge a lot. And I noticed, for example, for one project, I remember like I went, all right, well, that project is $10,000. All right, cool. No, like, oh, too expensive. No, it was just, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the time they're just going to say, yeah, like you're really shooting yourself in the foot when you give a lower price because they're always going to want to save money, you know? So if you give them a lower price, they're not going to be like, oh, let me pay you more. Like,
exactly.
Why not? Yeah. Yeah.
Why so little?
Yeah. They're not going to do that ever. And so, you're honestly the worst possible scenario is you pitch, let's say, that 10 grand and then they say no. Okay, then come down to 7 if you want to still work with them after they say no. but because that's kind of like a red flag if they're already like trying to haggle you a little bit. But still, like, let them tell you no instead of you telling yourself no. That's huge in the first year.
Now, how did you end up choosing a set of skills? Because I mean, looking at your profile, right? You're one of those marketers that people call it like the wild card of a company. So you do all of the marketing for them. Like it's a startup, you're everywhere, right? How did you choose them because there was a need for them, or did you choose them because that was what you enjoy doing?
Yeah. Well, you like what's the term when you foreshadowed what the two different ways you could do this are. So first you can pick what you enjoy. That's like the first strategy for picking a service. And that's pretty simple. It's like, okay, do you enjoy doing this thing? Great. Then you're just going to do more of that thing as a freelancer. The other way, which is actually the path that I kind of recommend more, is figuring out what's the highest in demand, because you might enjoy, let's say, doing podcast management, right? But let's say no one's looking for it. Then you're never going to find clients because no one's actively looking for it. So I always propose that people try to find a blend of the two, of course. Don't just do something you hate because you will burn out. And I've actually had that happen to me as well my first year. But you end up looking at jobs online for freelance gigs and see what are people actually posting that is something that you already know how to do. And you try to find that overlap. And so for me, I noticed a lot of people wanted ads. They wanted like someone to manage their ads for them. I realized that this was one of the higher paying skills. And I also just anecdotally knew that it was much easier to prove ROI compared to like SEO, where it takes a lot longer to prove your ROI. And so it was kind of like the trifecta of things like, okay, I know I can get them to pay me a lot. I know people are looking for it. I know I can keep them because I can show them the value. It's very black and white. If I spent X, I made Y. And a lot of freelance gigs are not that black and white. And so it's a lot harder to argue your pricing. So that's how I ended up picking the ads game. But so I would say if you're not sure what to pick, either do what you enjoy, but risk not getting clients, or try to find something that has clients already actively looking for it. And then if you can find an overlap with something you enjoy, that's the best combination.
Absolutely. And one of the things that happened, at least in my case, again, I'm putting myself here everywhere, but sure. I started freelancing, right? And then one of the things that came out of my mind was like, look, maybe I don't need to freelance by myself. I can start hiring people and start creating some sort of an agency. Like I do have my phantom agency called The Water Lemon, which is, I produce all these videos and stuff. But is that what you're planning to do? Is that what you recommend? Or do you think people should get really good on their own before they even plan to grow as an agency?
It's more so the latter, to answer your question, of you should definitely get really good on your own, but also not everyone is cut out to be a manager. I think there's this narrative in society that you need to like rise the corporate ladder. And honestly, the skills that you need to be an IC and the skills you need to be a manager are so different. And there's just a massive gap. Like that's why there's so many bad bosses, because they didn't have the skills to know how to be a good manager. And so I would do some internal self-reflection of, do you even want to be a manager? Can you handle delegating tasks? Can you handle managing people? Can you handle them eating into your profits, right? And if you feel like yes to all of those things, then sure, go down the agency path. But regardless if you do it or not, you still have to get 100%. Like you need to be the top 1% of your skill, because once you are, you can charge higher rates. That's what we talked about, like you're getting hired to do a specific thing. And if you are the best in the world at this one thing, you can charge as much as you want because people are going to want to work with the best. And so there's that element of charging more. But also, if you want to be able to create an agency, you need to have a standard operating system that you work on, right? Of, okay, if a client comes in, I know the form I need to have. I know the documents that need to be in place right away. I have a set process for doing things, because that is going to make it easier to hand off to somebody else. And if you don't have that, you're just adding more work. The goal is for them to give you less work. And if you don't have those processes, it's just going to be more work teaching that person how to do what you do. So get really good at it, charge higher prices, and then build out processes. And then you're ready to start an agency.
It's one of those things that you do it to yourself.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I have a friend who did that where she started a solo like freelancing email marketing thing, and now she has an agency with like 12 people, and
Oh,
she
wow.
talks about like yeah, she's doing really well, but she had a lot of issues because she didn't build those processes in advance. And so she was like, I have way too many staff members. Like I could literally have like 4 and get the same amount of work done with 12. And that's why like having that, operational system in place is important.
Now to go back a little bit to the mentoring part, right? You do
Sure.
get calls about people trying to learn to get into the freelancing world.
Yeah.
What are the main questions? What is the main sort of blocker for people to take that step?
Yeah. It is crazy how identical the calls are. It is like the exact same problems across the board. One is, I don't want to leave my job. First of all, you don't have to start freelancing. Like you can just try a side client, see if you like it. Okay, you like it, then you can quit if you want. I actually advise people don't wait until you have 70% of your salary covered and then quit your job, because then it's not going to be such a hard blow. It's going to be a lot of work for a little bit, but then you can more safely quit your job. And so that's the first thing. It's like you don't have to quit your job right away. And then also a lot of it is mindset related, like we were talking about, where a lot of people just genuinely believe they can't get clients. And I throw just some stats at them of like over half the workforce freelances now. It's huge. There's a huge market for it. And it's understanding, where do you fit in that piece? And I think that's where they have an issue with freelancing, is that they don't really know where that is, because it's not also just figuring out what skill you have to offer. It's who are you going to offer it to. The more niche you can get, what is the phrase? The niches are in the riches, or no, the riches are in the niches. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, like they don't know that to a T. And that's like the first thing I tell them. Like, you need to know that. And obviously that can change. Like as you start, you'll like iterate and it'll make more sense over time and become more aligned with what you want to do. But yeah, like they don't have that. And so they feel a lot more nervous of, oh, I'm going to have to compete with overseas talent and I would charge US rates. It's like, you're playing a different game. You don't want those kind of clients. Like you want the clients that understand you're the expert in the space. And so you need to realize you are the expert yourself internally, and then you could go and get clients. And so a lot of it is a mindset type of call where I'm like, you can actually do this. It's honestly like I'm hyping them up. That's like 90% of the call. And then
it's a cheerleading call.
That, yeah, it really is. It really is. And because I feel like once you hear other people are doing it, it's just like, okay, I can do this. And so I'm glad we're having these conversations where we both freelance to like help others realize they can do it. And then the second thing would be pricing. I get a lot of questions about pricing, of how do you do it? When do you use certain types of pricing? They don't even realize there are things outside of hourly pricing, and so probably a mix of those two things, but probably 80% of it is mindset related, to be honest.
The pricing thing is crazy. I remember I met a friend in the last Web Summit. He does basically the same thing I do, right? Like a video for companies and try to figure out the video strategy and things like that. And we had a quick chat, and that was the beginning of my freelancing experience. And I remember he asked me, so how much are you charging, Marcus? I'm like, well, this much. 10 times that, Marcus. 10 times that. And I'm like, dude, I kind of charge 10 times that. I just started. I was like, doesn't matter. Like, nobody's like, you're going to get more hassle. You're going to get more, like, it's going to be harder for you to charge little and try to convince people than just show up there and maybe lose 1 or 2 clients. But that one client is going to say, sure, man. I mean, you're the expert. We'll let you do your thing. And then you just cover every other expense out of that work, right?
Agree with all of that. And it's crazy how much we price based on time when we should price based on value that you provide, right? Like if you're going to bring this company, let's say $1 million in revenue, why are you only charging $2,000 a month? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's a drop in the bucket compared to what you're going to bring them. And so I think to your point, like quantifying what is the value that you're going to be bringing them. If you can't accurately do that yet, that's something you should be able to do before you start freelancing, is think about what the revenue could be for a company if they hired you. Have some case studies to back that up if you can, because then you can charge more. But yeah, then you can raise your pricing to crazy amounts, like $10,000 a month or whatever, because you can argue, okay, I know I can easily like triple that if you hire me, like I could like give you at least 30 grand a month back in return, then the numbers just make sense. And so I agree with everything you're saying. Yeah, is pricing based on value instead of just time is really when you start making that cash as a freelancer.
Then it becomes easier.
Yeah, it definitely gets easier over time. You feel a lot more comfortable selling yourself, and you start to realize what you're worth, because you'll also see all the bad freelancers that are out there, and you're like, oh, I know I could do better work than that. And so it like helps kind of remind you of, oh, I can do this, and I do deserve this much, you know?
That's cool. I'm taking that for myself again. Like this call is literally for me. So I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah, this is actually us doing a mentoring session.
By the way, so this is how mentor calls work. If you never had one, it's this.
Yeah, it is.
Look, I don't want to ask you for advice, because every little thing that you said is great advice for anyone trying to go freelancing. So what I want to ask you is like where people can find resources on the little help, or where did you find the resources that you needed to take that step beside Growth Mentor, which is probably the best way anyways, but beside Growth Mentor, like what helped you say, okay, yeah, I have everything I need?
Yeah, I would, if they're not on Growth Mentor, I would reach out to the people who are actively freelancing and in the thing that you want to do, and then see if you can like buy them a coffee or like give them like a Postmates gift card, whatever. Like try to sweeten the deal to get some of their time, and then just ask them questions. That's something that I did a lot of in the early days, was because there's so many ad contractors out there. So I asked a lot of them, and agencies too. I was like trying to understand what's the pricing that people are averaging around. Well, how do you structure this? Like I actually did a lot of subcontract work, which is something that I think a lot of people could benefit from in the early stages of their freelancing career. So how that works is, you probably already know this for anyone who doesn't know. So there's a person who is the face of the account. So let's say I'm working with Google and I subcontract under Marco. Marco is going to be the one who mostly talks to Google, but I'm actually doing the work for Marco. Yeah, I'm pretty much doing the work, and Marco is kind of there as the middleman facilitating the client relationship. But I get to learn how Marco does things and how he talks to clients, if I'm still getting paid to do that, because Marco's paying me, Google's paying Marco, right? And so that is how I learned a lot, is because I did that. I probably worked with 3 or 4 different people who had already been freelancing. I actually still do some subcontract work now, because it's honestly kind of easier, because then I don't have to deal with the client stuff like they have to deal with it. So anywho, that's a great way to get started too, is if you talk to these people, ask if you can subcontract under them, because honestly, a lot of them will probably say yes, because they don't want to do the work. So it kind of is a win-win. Yeah.
I know a lot of people who would rather definitely do the work instead of talking to customers. Actually, I just wanted to ask you one more thing, just in case. Did you ever have a bad client, a bad customer that either didn't like the results, or it was just hard to get the money from them, or like any bad experience on the freelance?
Yes, I definitely had some. And
you don't need to mention them unless you really hate them. Right?
Of course. No, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. But to anyone who started freelancing or is going to freelance, you're going to have a bad client. It's going to happen. You can't avoid it. You'll get better over time at learning how to hire, like what clients are right for you. What are the client green flags and red flags you look out for? And this was early on, because I didn't really know how to properly assess who was the right client for me. And so they were just a major pain, to be honest. Like they were constantly slacking me for updates on things. Like they were very micromanagey, and they would like change things that of my own that I created, like not tell me they changed it. So I'm like, why is this like this? Like find out they changed it. And they would like not pay me on time. Like they were just a real hassle client. And honestly, the Pareto principle is true in everything. And 20% of your clients will cause 80% of your problems. And they're always going to be the lowest paying clients. I can guarantee you. Your highest paying clients are typically going to be the easiest to deal with. And so, because So if they're already wanting to make you pay, like charge you less, or they want to pay you less, then it's already a red flag.
That's the biggest. Yeah, that's probably the biggest red flag for sure.
Yeah, they're going to be a pain. They're going to, yeah, unless you have some sort of compensation plan in place of how you can get paid more later.
Get ready,
which is fine. I'm okay with that. But yeah, so if anything, know that it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Everyone gets a bad client, and then you just learn from it, and you
try to, yeah, exactly. Try to avoid them next time. So, Faith, where can people find? I mean, we can find you on LinkedIn. It's your like I told you before. Your name is almost as cool as mine. We're probably in the same level.
I know, right? Yeah.
But where can people find you? Where can find your work? How we can point them in your direction besides Growth Mentor?
Sure. So yeah, if you want to have a call like this, Growth Mentor is great. I love doing these types of things and helping people get on their freelancing journey. LinkedIn's fine. You can message me there and ask me questions if you don't want to do a full-on call. I have a website where you can also fill out a form. You can also see my case studies and my ad creative portfolio. You can see how I pitch to clients. And I think that would be really helpful for people if they want to see how I market myself. And then, I have a whole course that teaches literally all of this, but I'm not going to plug it. You could, if you go on my LinkedIn, you'll find it.
I'll plug it in the description later. Don't worry.
I'll put it in there. Oh. Nice. Yeah. That teaches people how to do all of this as well, because we got asked so many times of me and my friend, we're just like, let's just make this all in one thing, and then people can just watch it and learn how to do this. And so, and it's been a fun journey with that too. So, it's freelancing is great. TLDR freelancing is great. Everyone should try it. And you can also go back and forth. Like you can you can go back to full-time if you want, and then go back freelancing later, just depending on what you need in your life at the time.
It's good to, good to test the waters, basically.
Yeah.
I like that.
I tested it for a while. Yeah, 2.5 years. And now I actually recently accepted a full-time job, which is crazy. I never thought I would be saying this, but it was just happened to be a dream opportunity for me. So I decided to do it. So keep in mind, if you're like thinking about it, but you're not sure, that it's not permanent. You can always go back. If you're kind of addicted to the paycheck, you can go back. That wasn't my case because I actually made more money freelancing. But if you want, if you're like a dream opportunity comes your way,
you better take it, right? Yeah.
Go back. Yeah, you got to take it.
Absolutely. So, Faith, thank you so much for all of this masterclass on how to go freelancing. Tons of nuggets in there for not just for me, for everybody. So great to have you here. People, go to Growth Mentor, check on Faith's profile, and you'll see all the things they can help you with, not only on the freelancing side, but also like the expertise that she has on doing ads for many companies around the world. And Faith, again, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Now, I need to confess something. This episode was a lot about answering questions for myself. I asked a lot of the things that I needed to know. Because I was also going into the world of freelancing. And Faith is an encyclopedia of good advice if you want to go that way. I'm going to tell you also the 3 things I'm taking with me with our regular swoop. So let's go. Okay, so the first thing that I'm really taking with me is the time will never be right. If you are thinking about it, just go ahead and do it. There's one thing that she mentioned, though, that is very important. If you worry about the money, make sure you have covered a big chunk of your regular salary before you jump into it, just to make you feel better and safe. But again, there's never a right time. You go ahead and do it. And linked with the money issue is about the pricing. When we're talking about pricing, you always think that you're not good enough and you want to start charging little. Don't go that way. See how much money people like you are charging, and go ahead for that price. Doesn't matter if you're just starting. You're gonna get a lot less hassle from people who are ready to pay more than the people who are looking for the bargain. So double check your pricing, do a little research, and don't be scared of charging a good amount. And the last thing is you will have a bad customer. Doesn't matter what happened, and that's why I asked that question, is that you will have bad people. You will have a bad customer that is going to be hard for them to pay or hard to work with, and you just have to be ready for that. And little by little, you're going to start learning the red flags that they're going to help you avoid that kind of customers and get a better relationship with the rest of your customers. Anyways, So those three things. It's never the right time. Check on your pricing and be ready for a bad customer. So with that, let's finish this. Whoop. So yeah, talking to Faith was great. She's an amazing person and encyclopedia of how to go freelancing. So make sure you go and find her in the Growth Mentor Network. If you want to go freelancing, book a call with her. She's going to help you out. I would also invite you to follow all of our social media channels to stay tuned and stay updated with everything happening in the world of Growth Mentor. I want to invite you to subscribe to our podcast if you want to grow your career and your business. And I want to thank you for all of your support. So with that being said, my name is Marcus, and I will see you next time. Cheers.